Imagine a world where science and religion stand on different sides of the barricade. A world where any dissection of the human body is not just a taboo, but a real sin that could turn into a death sentence. It was in such conditions that Leonardo da Vinci decided to do the incredible, to study the human body down to the smallest detail. But why would an artist need such precision? It turns out that for Leonardo, the human body was not just a physical shell. He believed that only by understanding how it was organized, he would be able to create works of art that would look perfect and bring to life the most complex images. You know the famous Vitruvian Man figure? It's the result of his quest to find the perfect proportions. Leonardo literally took a man apart piece by piece, from muscles and bones to the smallest vessels, to unravel the secrets of harmony. But it was dangerous to do so. During the Renaissance, dissecting bodies was considered sacrilege. The church forbade such research, calling it sacrilegious. But Leonardo was stubborn. At night, he would sneak into hospitals and morgues, where he would dissect the bodies of the dead to see for himself how everything worked. His notes, filled with detailed drawings and calculations, amaze even modern scientists. They are so precise they could be the basis for anatomy textbooks. He created more than 240 incredibly detailed illustrations of anatomy that outpaced his time by a full century. His notes even described processes such as the functioning of the heart and the movement of fluid in blood vessels, which scientists only fully confirmed 400 years later. But why was Leonardo willing to risk everything for this? His reputation, his safety, and even his life. On the face of it, it was for the sake of art. But perhaps he was looking for something more, the key to human nature itself. In the 15th century, long before the advent of X-rays and modern microscopes, Leonardo da Vinci, without any medical training, created drawings that today amaze even professional doctors. But what exactly did he discover? One of his most amazing achievements had to do with the heart. Leonardo was the first to accurately describe the workings of the heart valve. He guessed that the valves of the heart open and close to allow blood to flow in only one direction, and their movement creates a certain rhythm. To figure this out, he experimented by pouring water and seeds into transparent heart models he made himself. Sounds like science fiction, but that's how he studied fluid flow. The most incredible thing is that his theories were only confirmed 400 years later, in the 20th century, when scientists had access to sophisticated equipment. And his drawings of the female uterus? Leonardo didn't just study shape and structure. He depicted the development of the fetus and the structure of the placenta with stunning accuracy. This is not only art, but also a real science. To this day, these images are still used in medical textbooks. Leonardo showed how the anatomy of mother and child are related and explained the functions of some organs long before it was understood by medicine. Interestingly, his discoveries went far beyond human anatomy. He compared human organs to parts of mechanisms that he himself had invented. For example, he described the movement of joints in the same way as hinge mechanisms. This approach allowed him to see the body not as a chaotic collection of tissues, but as a perfectly organized system. His comparisons inspired not only physicians but also engineers who studied mechanical devices. But you know what's really striking? Leonardo made all these discoveries alone, relying only on his eyes, ingenious logic, and notepaper. He didn't need laboratories or instruments. And this in an era when knowledge of anatomy was scant and full of myths. For a long time, Leonardo's anatomical sketches were considered lost. That all changed in the 19th century when his notes were accidentally found in an archive. Scientists were shocked. The drawings created in the 15th century turned out to be so detailed and accurate that they could be used as a manual for medics. For example, his depictions of the heart, muscles, and bones surpassed anything else created in that era. Leonardo was able to depict the human being like no one before him, not only externally but also internally. These sketches became a real treasure for medicine. Modern surgeons are amazed at how accurately he conveyed the position of organs and the work of joints without modern technology. His work became the basis for future anatomical research, even if Leonardo himself never recognized it. But his impact on art was no less influential. Before Leonardo, artists depicted people conventionally. Faces and bodies were sketchy, movements unnatural. However, thanks to his study of anatomy, human figures in paintings became realistic. Remember his Mona Lisa or The Last Supper. Each character looks alive. This detail became the new standard for the Renaissance. Leonardo also changed the approach to studying the body. He was the first to use observation as a basis for creativity. This approach inspired not only artists, but also scientists. It can be said that he linked science and art, making them inseparable. But did you know that some of his writings still hold mysteries? For example, he mentioned strange patterns in the movement of blood that scientists are only now beginning to understand. Leonardo's research was recorded in more than 13,000 pages of notes, but most of them disappeared without a trace. Today, we only have about a quarter of his notes. What was in the rest? Perhaps he made discoveries we will never know. One of the most shocking mysteries has to do with the Catholic Church's attitude toward his writings. It is known that the Church often suppressed such research. Rumor has it that some of Leonardo's records were destroyed precisely on her orders. After all, his works contradicted medieval dogmas. They showed the human body not as a mystical creation, but as a complex mechanism. His works contain a description of the structure of the brain and nervous system, but many of these studies turned out to be inaccessible. They were either lost or hidden. Another interesting thing, despite societal pressures, Leonardo not only studied human bodies, but openly showed this in his drawings. His attention to detail is astounding, from the finest layers of skin to the location of blood vessels. And he did it all by hand, without the instruments we have today. Leonardo da Vinci died in 1519, but his brilliant ideas live on. Interestingly, he was not recognized for his anatomical research during his lifetime. It wasn't until 500 years later, in the 21st century, that he was called the Father of Anatomy. He earned this title due to the incredible accuracy of his drawings and his deep understanding of the human body. Today, his work remains a source of inspiration for scientists, doctors, and artists. For example, his famous anatomical sketches are still on display in museums around the world, from the Louvre to the British Library. People stand in long lines to see the writings of a man who changed science and art. But the most amazing thing about Leonardo's legacy is his ability to combine the incompatible. He was an artist who understood how muscles work so he could portray them correctly. He was a scientist who explored the insides of humans to create art. However, it is important to remember that many of Leonardo's discoveries went undiscovered during his lifetime. Perhaps if his work had been published immediately, medicine would have advanced hundreds of years ahead. At the same time, it is these lost pages that create an aura of mystery around Leonardo. He remains an example of how one individual can unite science, art, and the dream of perfection.